That's what 22 years of Vera Donavan will do to you.
Oh, Mrs. Donavan, I promise there won't be any boys.
You're excused, Susan.
But Mrs. Donavan, please,
Look on the bright side, dear. You may not have gotten the job, but think what fun you'll have telling your friends what a bitch Vera Donavan is. Next.
I've been working since I was 13 years old. Started out at the Devereaux Hotel housekeeping. By the time I left there in high school, I was cleaning 3 floors all by myself. I took care of my father's house after my mother passed on. I'm married and I have a daughter. This is a big house, but I'm a big woman and I think I can do a good job.
I do not pretend to be an easy woman to work for. Dolores. This house has a number of rules. I'm sure you've heard them secondhand, but I'll tell you in person, so we can avoid a teary scene later on. I like all the windows open every day for at least 2 hours.
And she did have her ways, did she ever?
And fresh flowers.
I don't know where she got her ideas, but I do know she was a prisoner of them.
The silver has to be checked and, of course, cleaned every week. It may look clean to you, but I like to see my face in it.
The tubs had to be scrubbed out every day with vinegar and baking soda. Tablecloths, napkins, handkerchiefs, everything hand-washed, ironed, and starched. Mildew was grounds for firing. But the sheets now, that was one thing you didn't ever want to get wrong. You could have cut off a high-flown, snobbish nose, and she still would have been able to smell a sheet that had hung outside from one baked in the dryer.
Hello and welcome to Book versus Movie. This is a podcast where we read books that have been adapted into movies and then we try to decide which we like better, the book or the movie. I am Margot P. of coloniabook.com and this is my good friend and co-host Margot D. of Brooklyn Fitchick.
Hi, everyone.
Very excited. We got all carried away before we got on the air. Almost forgot to record this podcast because we've been so excited talking about the books that we're going to cover this month. It is October, and here at Book versus Movie, that means we do books of creepy, suspenseful, sci-fi, spooky, that kind of thing. Not so much the slasher, blood and gore thing, because I am a big scaredy cat. But today we're going to be talking about an author we've talked about many, many times. But we are really glad that you've joined us. Perhaps you're just joining us because you're a big Stephen King fan. If that's true, welcome. We have plenty of episodes.
We have lots of those. Yep.
Because we are big fans. But if you have suggestions for future episodes, we have the holidays coming up. We often have theme months that we do throughout the year. Like this year, for the first time, we've been doing this podcast for 10 years. And this year, for the first time, we tried mysteries was it in May?
Yeah.
Did we do mysteries in May? And that was a new thing for us. We do musicals in March. And we are still not quite settled on what we want to do during the holiday season because we've done so many episodes in our 10 years. So if you have suggestions or if you'd just like to meet other listeners of this podcast and interact with us, there's a few places where you could do that on the internet.
We have a basic Facebook page. Be sure to like it, but we're much more interactive in our private Facebook group. In Facebook, you type Book VS Movie Podcast Group and ask to join. And we really do just talk about books and movies there. And we also have a couple of lists that feature, thankfully, Thaddeus does for us, where it features all the episodes we've covered in the past, a pretty decent list. We've been doing this for 10 years. And then ideas and suggestions that people have. We're also on Twitter, Instagram, and Threads. And at those places, you spell out book versus and movie. And then we have an old-timey email, book versus movie podcast, spelled it all out at gmail.com. And if you would like some stickers, email us your address and we will drop them in the mail for you.
And if you really enjoy the show and maybe you'd like to see some of our back or hear some of our back catalog, and when you would like to help support us, you can join us on Patreon.
Yes, Patreon. We're putting all our episodes from 2021 and then previous to that on the wall. Recently, we've put up there Elvis and Me, In a Lovely Place, The Parent Trap, The Invisible Man, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, The Picture of Dorian Gray, The Bad Seed, and Sleeping Beauty is coming out. So all those are there available on our Patreon wall. And we want to say thank you to Heather who joined. We use that money just for the books and the movies and just for the costs for keeping the show together. But also remember, you can always sign up for free. We do have some free episodes on there. We're putting all of our Stephen King episodes for free on there, but we also put clips and things like that from the movies that we're talking about. So that's a great place to join us. And another way you can also support us is just leaving us a review wherever you get your podcasts or some stars. Just be sure to subscribe, or hell, get a sticker, put it on your laptop, go to the coffee shop and look really cool and tell people about the show. That'd be great.
I don't even know where to begin because we've talked about Stephen King so many times. I've kind of lost track because this is a writer who, although, as I just said, I don't like gory slasher kinds of things. I am a tremendous fan of Stephen King because he's just such a good writer. He's such a writer's writer. This is going to be a great conversation because this is really an interesting piece of his body of work. It's a very different kind of thing that he's trying with this novel. But let's just give some of the broad strokes.
I'll read his bio from the book, from the jacket in front of me.
Oh, good. Oh, that's perfect.
Stephen King is the best-selling author, most recently of Gerald's Game, Needful Things, and For 4 Past Midnight. He lives in Bangor, Maine with his wife, the novelist Tabitha King. He's won all the awards. He's like the king of Bangor, Maine. Last year we had someone, Alex Steed, where we talked about Misery. He had actually met Stephen King. He was up in Maine. Very interesting person. His first book was Carrie, and we really enjoyed that book. The way he writes about women over the years has really changed, and so remarkably. And this is like in the 90s is when he really, I think, came into his own and really started featuring women characters that are so rich and interesting and complex. Mm-hmm. And this is just a standout, this one for me. Dolores Claiborne is just amazing.
Absolutely. And if you yourself are a writer or an aspiring writer and you have not read his On Writing a Memoir of the Craft, just get it. Just get it. Mm-hmm. You will not be sorry. It's a book that will make you a better writer. It's so good. Yeah, I mean, I'm just looking at this. We've done... Oh, I'm just going to read the ones that I remember that we've done, and you tell me if I've forgotten any.
Okay.
Well, we did Carrie. Mm-hmm. We did Stand By Me, which was based on a short story called The Body. We did Misery. Mm-hmm. We did Shawshank Redemption. That's 4. We're doing Dolores Claiborne. Did we do The Green Mile? I don't remember if we did the Green Mile.
No, it's definitely on the list.
Okay.
I need to emotionally prepare myself for that movie.
We have not done The Shiny because of me. So I like to sleep at night. I think that's it, right? Did I forget any of them?
No, those are the biggies.
Okay. So, but this one, you're going to read his bio. Go. Did we get through the whole thing? That was it. Okay. I mean, you can look it up. Look.
Yeah. I mean, he's so famous. It's
follow
ridiculous.
him on all the social media.
Yes.
I always appreciate his considered opinion of current events. Let's put it that way.
And music and movies, and he supports young writers. He supports. He really, really is. He's special. We're very lucky. Really is. We're very lucky.
Indeed. And as you say, like, thanks to him. I mean, these movies that I've just rattled off, not Shawshank, because it takes place in a men's prison, but a lot of the development of female, roles in cinema can be traced right back to Mr. Stephen King. Mm-hmm. And I often wonder, like, what if we didn't have Stephen King? Oh, my
I don't want to
goodness.
think about it. I have a poster. That's all Stephen King books. Poster behind me. You can see it.
I was just saying before we got on the air, I had read Dolores Claiborne back in the day. I remembered liking it, but I didn't actually remember that much about it. And I never saw this film. So the film was a big surprise to me, the choices that were made, and we'll talk about that. But first of all, we have to talk about the cover. So you and I both have our Mind for the Library. This I just picked up at my local library today because it's October, so they have all the Stephen King books on display, right?
Nice.
And it was right there, right when I walked in. And the cover, it seems to be a view either through a circular hole in a stone wall or perhaps a view from the bottom of a well. And standing up at the top of the well is a silhouette of a woman. And you can't quite tell like what is going on behind her, but it appears to be a solar eclipse, or perhaps she has a halo. We don't know. It's full of mystery, this cover. This is one of its best covers, I think.
I love it.
It's so good. I do judge books by their cover, and I'm not always thrilled with his covers, I have to say. They're not my favorite always, but this is a brilliant one. And then when you open the book, you are greeted with um I don't know if this is a woodcut or an etching.
Yes.
But it's a very like folk art, New England folk art, primitive colonial Americana kind of picture of this house in the country, and there's a truck and there's a barn, and you're like, okay, this is a country story about country folks, and there's a little town in the distance, and the church in the steeple, and there's a little bay, there's water with little boats. And then when you go a little farther, there's a map of Maine. And then across the map is this dark band, and it says that the map is of the path of a total eclipse of the sun that took place on Saturday, July 20th, 1963. And I have no doubt that that is exactly what happened. I'm sure that is a real thing that happened.
Yeah.
It's really good. And then you begin the book, and through every single page of the book, every single page at the top of it has a little, like one of these little, again, etching woodcut. I don't know what it is. Yeah. Of the progression of an eclipse, like going into the eclipse and coming out of the eclipse. But the book, somebody's just talking. Are they talking to me? Who am I talking to?
Right.
It's a voice that's just talking. And this person has a Maine dialect kind of accent that it's written in, which is fun right from the start. Gory. And she says, what at the beginning is, what did you ask Andy Bissett? So who's Andy Bissett? We don't know. Do I understand these rights as you've explained them to me? Gory. What makes some men so numb? So right away, we're thinking, okay, so this is somebody, she's giving a legal deposition or she's giving a testimony. She's there's some kind of legal proceeding where she's talking. And then she talks for the whole book without stopping. There's no chapters. There's barely even like separation of paragraphs. It is just, she's just talking and talking and talking. And as she's talking, and she's colorful. She veers off onto tangents. But as she's in her folksy, not terribly educated way, this incredible story unfolds before us. She has something that she's there to talk about, some turn of events. But before we can even get to that, she wants to tell us something else first. Let me I'm going to have to pull up the synopsis because there's a lot in the book that's not in the film, if you've only seen the film.
I mean, I loved reading this book, but also Frances Sternhagen did the audiobook for this movie and does an excellent job. Because this is definitely like the monologues that one can have, like use an acting class for this. Wow.
It's a monologue. You could take any section out of this and do it as a monologue. Absolutely, you could.
Yeah.
Read by Frances Sternhagen.
What did you ask, Andy Bissett? Do I understand these rights as you've explained them to me? Gory, what makes some men so numb? No, you never mind. Still you join and listen to me for a while. I got an idea you're going to be listening to me most of the night, so you might as well get used to it. Course I understand what you read to me. Do I look like I lost all my brains since I seen you down to the market? That was just Monday afternoon, in case you lost track. I told you your wife would give you merry hell about buying that day-old bread. Penny wise and pound foolish, the old saying is, and I bet I was right, wasn't I? I understand my rights just fine, Andy. Patricia Claiborne bore 5 boys and 6 girls and wasn't one of 'em raised foolish. I understand my rights and my responsibilities, too. God help me.
So it's 1992. The book takes place in the 80s. This is the first difference between the book and the movie. Book takes place in the 80s. It's supposed to be the late 80s when the book opens. And she's remembering back to the 1960s. Because remember, this total eclipse of the sun takes place, what did I just say, 1967?
63.
63. So Dolores Claiborne. We learn that Dolores Claiborne is her maiden name and that she was married to a fellow named St. George.
Joe.
So her name was Dolores St. George. Joe St. George was her husband. And in the book, she has 3 children. She has she has a daughter, who's the oldest, Selena, and then she has 2 younger sons who are little back in the 1960s when she's remembering. We gather that she's been brought into this whatever legal proceeding. Like we said, we don't know. It doesn't seem to be a trial. It seems to be like a deposition or a just an inquiry of some kind.
Yeah.
Into the death of her employer. And we deduce that they think that she, Dolores, is responsible for her employer's death. And we also learn that so the employer was this rich lady who lives in the big house on the hill, richest lady on this island off of Maine where they live. Dolores was her housekeeper. The woman is also famously dreadful. Not a liked person. Another big difference between the book and the movie is that, in the movie, this woman has like friends.
Yes. You can see her charming people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not at all in the book whatsoever.
No.
So Dolores, I'm sorry. So the woman's name is Vera
Donavan.
Thank you. And Vera Donavan, who was quite advanced in years, has fallen down the stairs or was pushed down the stairs. We do not know. Dolores was discovered standing over the body of her former employer holding a rolling pin. So we don't know. But they think that they suspect that Dolores killed her employer because they suspect that Dolores also bumped off her husband, Joe St. George. Dolores wants them to know. Dolores is like very without guile. She calls it like she sees it. She tells everybody who's in the room with her as she's giving this testimony what's what.
She reminds me of Sophia
fun.
on the Golden Girls.
She's very that. Yes.
Picture it.
Yes, picture it. Maine,
Little Tall Island, 1963.
She's like, okay, I'll get to what happened with Vera, my employer, but in order to explain that, I have to tell you what happened. We have to go all the way back to 1963. So, it's the 60s. And it's, town town on an island off the coast, couldn't be more remote, American town.
Mm-hmm.
Dolores is married to this guy, Joe. They've got 3 kids. Joe, not a good guy. And we should issue trigger warnings if you're not familiar with this story.
Yes.
There was a lot of violence. There is some sexual abuse. There is
alcoholism,
self-harm. Yeah, there's a lot.
It's an intense story.
It is a very intense story. So Dolores is married to this guy. He regularly beats her. He is really dreadful. And she's trying to protect her kids who are not that old. Selena's the oldest. She's like 13 at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And, but the other 2 are really, really little. And so she's really shielding them. They don't really know what's going on. And one day they're having a conversation. She's preparing dinner or something. And she just says something. She says something that's could be perceived as a little bit mouthy. Like just ever so slightly sassy. And Joe reacts by walking over to the wood stove, picking up a big, a log of firewood and whacking Dolores in the spine with it. Can't stand up. She kind of pulls her, but she's kind of trying to hide it from the kids. She doesn't really want them to know what's going on.
He doesn't hit her face.
He doesn't hit her face.
Right. the kids think it's like back and forth. Like 'cause
Yeah.
she whacks him with a pitcher, and that's all
Right.
Selena sees. So Selena
She
thinks
gets
her
it to-
mother
Right.
and her dad have
She
these
gets
big
it
rows.
together. She gets it together. She hides all of his abuse
Right.
from the kids. And this one time she kind of snaps and she whacks Joe over the head with like you put your coffee creamer in, kind of your half and half little pitcher, not a log.
Right.
But she whacks him on the head with it and it cuts him. And Selena, the daughter, happens to walk in right at that minute. So she's like, oh my gosh, my mommy's hurting my daddy. She must be terrible. And meanwhile, the dad has been telling her that the mom is so awful and the mom is abusive of him. And he's been feeding her these lines for years and years. So then she sees, evidence of this. And now she's like, oh, he was right. She's a monster. Gradually, Dolores notices that her daughter is becoming very withdrawn, very moody. She's very different. Her grades are plummeting. She's not participating. She's not helping around like she used to. She just seems like a different kid. And it's those teenage years, it's a rough patch where kids tend to be rebellious, but seems like it's more than that. And gradually, Dolores and she are alone on a ferry, and it comes out that she's trying to figure out like what is going on with you, and also Dolores doesn't know that the daughter has been being fed this stuff by the dad, and that the dad has been turning the daughter against.
And that's
Dolores.
It's a narcissist move. It's a triangulation. Narcissists will take a common person
Play
you both
everybody
have and
against
then
each
play them
other.
against each other. So that's what he's doing to Selena. In the story, in the book, she does tell her mother what her father's been doing.
Yes, she confesses that she comes out with it. And she also tries to jump off of the ferry and Dolores saves her. It's it is heartbreaking, this scene. And now Dolores is like, well, what do I do?
And Dolores is like, she's working for Vera for a couple of years. And Vera is, we've learned Vera's story. Vera's like very particular about how she wants everything done in this house. Her husband,
she's mean,
very mean, and is out loud and proud with it. She doesn't try to hide it. But she has her husband doesn't pay attention to her. Vera's husband doesn't even pay attention to her. Vera's husband ignores her. When her husband does show up, she tries to get his attention. He completely ignores her. And Dolores notices this. And then she gets even meaner when she notices that other people notice that he's being ignored. But she sees, and also Dolores has been putting this money aside for her 3 kids to save up some money. So if she has to leave one day, like it's supposedly for the college fund, but really it's an escape fund.
It's really an escape fund. Yeah, that's pretty clear. And also we should say, so that's going on with Dolores. Meanwhile, in Vera's house, we learn Vera's husband has been killed in a car accident. And Vera seems pretty fine with that. She seems pretty okay. But the only thing about it, according to Vera, the only thing about it is that her kids now don't want anything to do with her. And they're kind of estranged from her. And she's very upset about that. She's very upset that her children have kind of cut her off from their lives. And she comes up with this idea that because there's going to be this history-making solar eclipse, she's going to have a big sort of solar eclipse party viewing thing, and surely that will lure her kids back onto the island and back into her life. And the island house, by the way, was not her main house. So it's not like she didn't grow up there. It was sort of like their vacation home. And she ends up living there full time after the husband dies.
Right. It's their weekend home or summer home.
Yeah.
He comes up a couple of times, but not very often.
No, yeah,
and it's to escape the heat. The weather's much more pleasant
it's your
there.
vacation. You're by the water. So one day, so after Dolores makes this discovery, like, oh my gosh, what do I do? Okay, I guess it's go time. I guess it's time to cash in my money and get these kids and get out of here. And she goes to cash in her money, and guess what happened?
Joe stole her money. Joe goes to the bank, and because they're both on the account.
It's the 1960s, remember?
Women can't have their own accounts. He stole the money from her. And he just went into the bank and said, and it's called a passbook. And for you that don't know, they used to give you a book.
You had
you had a ledger
book,
yourself.
Like a passport.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it was a ledger, and you put in when you deposited, when you took out, and you were expected to do that for yourself before the ATMs and all that stuff. So anyway, he goes in there and says, "Oh, I lost my passbook. I need my cash." And so does he put the cash in another account so that she can't get to that?
I think that's what happens, right? So, and Dolores figures all this out. Now what? Now what?
And she goes to Vera.
So she goes to work
and she's crying.
She's crying. She just cannot keep it together. And Vera's like, again, Vera's very salty and prickly. And Vera's like, okay, what already?
And
it's such a big deal.
To her, I don't know if I can help you, Dolores. All my money's caught up in cash. Wow.
All I have is millions. Oops.
But Vera knows. Like, Vera gets her talk because Vera realizes once Dolores is not asking her for money, Dolores is just because she's too proud. She would never do that. But she's also like, what do I do? And then Vera starts to dissect the situation. And then Vera says to her, Dolores, sometimes husbands are leaving their mistresses' homes and their brakes don't work on their car. And
accidents happen to husbands all the time.
Right. And she's basically tacitly kind of explaining to Dolores, you have more options than you think. Are you ready for that? And she sends Dolores home. And Dolores sends her home, and then Dolores buys his favorite whiskey. And Dolores had almost hurt her ankle, like chasing after Selena. It's like there's this big hole over a well, and the wood is
an abandoned
well.
Yeah.
So she basically gets him drunk, and then she gets in a fight with him, and then he has her chasing.
She picks a fight with him so that he will chase her. Yeah.
And tells him what you're doing to Selena, and she's going to tell everybody what he's doing. And so he's going to kill her. So he chases her, and then he falls in the well. And in the book,
it's way scarier than in the movie, you guys.
He fights back in the book. He's not going quietly. He's screaming and yelling. He claws his way back up. He tries to grab her.
In the book, it's like she goes back to check on him the next day, and he's almost climbed out of this well. He's almost gotten himself out of this well.
He's that vengeful. He is that upset because he's a monster. Like, we have to remember that. Like, there's nothing stopping this guy. But eventually, he dies. He has one more, and then he falls and he dies. And then she goes in the house, and then she. Oh,
No, she hits him in the head with a rock.
She's like, "You're dying
now.
Like,
we're not doing this.
No.
Like, this is fun and games are over now."
Right. And then she goes around and tells everybody, I don't know, he went on a drunk. We were going to do this together, and he got wasted, and I can't find him. Have you seen him? Have you seen Joan? Have you seen Joe? Everyone's a little suspicious, but it turns out nobody liked him anyway. And there's one person, Sammy Stamshaw, the mailman, his father suspected that she killed him. There's a few people that suspected, but in the book, Dolores goes to the police station and she actually is crying, the constable, and she's crying about what's going on because she is upset. I mean, it's a very rough experience, but they can all tell, like, this woman is not a murderer. This woman is just like, she was abused and beaten, and this man was just a monster and probably chased her and just fell. And she didn't know what to do. So the kids are a little like, well, we're not sure about.
Because again, like Selena, even though like in the book, she's aware of what she hasn't like pushed. She hasn't repressed that memory of what her father did to her. So she knows that. But she also knows that she did see her mom attack her dad.
Right.
And so this part of her is like, I think she might be a murderer. I think she might have murdered dad. So it's difficult, and so they kind of, that relationship is fractured really from then on. In the book.
And it's so tragic because Selena
it's so sad.
Just takes in all this grief and sadness and guilt that she feels. And then years later, she and her mother, they're estranged, but not in like I don't know how to explain this, but the Serena is just incredibly depressed. Serena writes her, and then calls her. And she says sometimes when she's talking to her on the phone, she can hear her slurring her words. So she's assuming that Selena drinks in order to deal with her pain. Also, one of her sons dies in the Vietnam War. And then she has another son who's actually close to her. And then Vera has kids. And we don't hear about this in the movie.
So Vera's estranged from her kids in the book, and she's talking all the time. She brings it up that it really is a point of pain for her. And as we said, she's hoping that the children will come back for this solar eclipse. They don't. When Dolores is hired, she's just hired to kind of help out around the house, but she kind of rises up and rises up and rises up. So she becomes Vera's sole caretaker. And so for really many years, it's just these two women in that big house. Vera lives there, and she's caring for this woman around the clock. As cantankerous and prickly as she is, they just have this thing going on. And over the years, Vera, who's the older woman, Vera starts to develop like hallucinations. We don't know if it's just that she's got some kind of, mental decline or if it's something else. But gradually she starts feeling threatened and paranoid by things. And between her and Dolores, they kind of have this culture just between the two of them. And they start to refer to these forces and hallucinations that she sees as the dust bunnies, Dolores. And Vera will go, Dolores, the dust bunnies, the dust bunnies. And Dolores is like, oh, I'll get them. And she comes in and like pretends to sweep them away out of the room. And it's just this thing that they have, right? It's this
kind of sweet. I think
it's kind of sweet.
They have each other.
She comes in and rescues Vera from the dust bunnies on a regular basis. And so Dolores tells all this in this testimony. So she's like, yeah, I killed my husband. This is how, this is why, this is what happened. These were the circumstances. And I went on, I kept living with Vera. And, and we just spent all these years together, and she tells him about the dust bunnies and everything like that. And so now we're coming up to the circumstances of Vera's death. So Vera one night is really having a bad spell, really, really hallucinating. And she has gotten herself out of bed, out of her room, because she's running away from these imaginary dust bunnies. And Dolores catches her, or tries to catch her just before she goes down the stairs. But the two she's panicking, she's pushing Dolores away, and she falls down the stairs. It's grisly. Like, again, it's grislier in the book than it is in the movie.
It's Stephen King.
Things. Stephen King. Yeah. It is a grisly fall. And there she is, and she is barely clinging to life. And she begs Dolores, don't let them take me to the hospital. Just you got to, I'm counting on you. You've got to put me out of my misery. Go find something, anything to end this suffering of mine. Please, Dolores. And Dolores, because she does genuinely care for this woman, she's like, okay, I guess. And she's just like crazy running through the house trying to find, I don't know, like, and she finally she gets a rolling pin. It takes her a while to find that. She has to go really searching for like something adequate to do this weird task. And in the time that it took her to ransack the house and all that, Vera dies on her own. Dolores is standing there with the rolling pin, and Vera is dead now on the stairs. And when who should come in?
Sammy Stanshaw, the mailman. And he's like, Dolores, what are you doing up there? Because he always suspected, because his father told him, look out for Dolores because she killed her husband. Like that's those two wackos up there.
There's a little bit of, small town
gossip. We didn't mention Vera also lost her kids, right? Didn't they die in a car accident?
I'm getting to that. So the mailman walks in on this like very incriminating looking scene. Of course. Because of course the mailman just walks into your house.
It's mean.
Like you do. But anyway, so Dolores is telling all of this in this, whatever it is, testimony. And she's like, and that's what happened. And they were like, okay, but here's the thing, Dolores. We also know that Vera left you all of her money and property. So seems like you maybe had a motive to push the lady down the stairs, no? And Dolores has never heard this before. Dolores had always assumed, like, no way is this woman going to leave me anything but her bedpan to clean after she's gone.
And it's decades that she's working for her. Decades.
Decades.
After the accidents, after the murders. I mean,
way after this.
Right.
After way many years after.
So she's playing a long game, if she is.
Yeah, she knows her very, very well. And she just is like, there's no way. Like this old broad, I mean, we're friendsies, but I'm not kidding myself. Like, I know that as soon as, like, when she's gone, I pack my bags and I'm out of here. But she had not heard that. So she's hearing this for the first time and she is shocked to hear that she's getting this money. And she says, no, I can't possibly. First of all, why would she give me that money? And even if she did, I don't want it. It should go to her children. She always felt so estranged from her children. Their children, definitely, they should be the ones to get the money. And they were like, Dolores, her kids are also dead. She had kids, but they died. Now, here's the part that I don't know. Did the children die in the same car accident as the husband that was orchestrated by, or was it a separate car accident?
It's a separate car accident.
Killed by a car accident.
It's a car accident, but it's a separate car accident. But the son was very suspicious. Like, both of the kids were kind of suspicious about what
happened with their dad.
Like, it always just seemed a little convenient because they probably knew what he was doing.
So when Vera was planning this big solar eclipse party, her kids were gone already.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they hadn't been gone that long. They've been gone for like
2 years.
Like 2 years at this point. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Not a very long time. So she's really not okay. So anyway, so with all of that, and then Dolores says, so learning this, Dolores still says, I don't want the money.
And it's $30 million in the book.
Yeah, it's way more money in the book.
A lot more money.
Yeah. And Dolores doesn't want anything to do with any of the money. And so then, and she donates it in the end. But so then they decide like, oh, well, obviously they decide that she's innocent. And they don't really seem to care much that she killed her husband.
It all seems to kind of work out in the wash, I guess they think, to see it as,
Yeah, they don't, because the husband is arguably, except for getting hit in the face with a rock, the husband is an accident of sorts as well. Misadventure, I guess, as they say. And that's the book. And then there's an epilogue where we learn that there's been some reconciliation between Dolores and her daughter, and also that all of the money was donated to some charity.
New England Home for Little Wanderers, which is so sweet.
Little Wanderers.
Boy, they all went to college, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, that's the story. Like,
but it's the way that it's told that's so fun about this book.
And her as a character is just, she's so,
because what emerges,
and
she's so funny and
dry.
She tells Vera what's what. Like, she does not kowtow to the high and mighty Vera. What is her last name? Donavan. She calls her by her first name. She gives as good as she gets. Even like, she's not having anybody. She's not suffering any fools. But she's somebody like some really terrible circumstances that she was dealt. How do you even survive some of this stuff? Like, so what emerges is this immensely strong character is very matter-of-factly just explaining what happened and her role in it, and what she feels is her role in it, and what she feels is not her role in it. And she's kind of, she's just such an interesting character. We get so many dimensions of her. Moments where you literally are laughing out loud at stuff she's saying. And then at moments where you were just like, gasping, you're like audibly gasping at what happens. And, but she's telling us this whole story. That's the book, is her telling of her own story, in her own voice. And it's just riveting.
Yeah.
It's one of these you just can't put it down, especially because there's no chapters. It's one of these like, at the end of the chapter, I'll take a break, and it's just all one chapter.
And once again, Frances Sternhagen, who was in Misery, she's the one that does the audiobook, and I totally recommend it. Stephen King loved Misery and particularly loved Kathy Bates being in the lead role, which, and we covered that last year. You could listen to our take about it. But he wrote Dolores Claiborne specifically for her and knew it was going to be sold to Castle Rock and made.
How could you see anybody but Kathy Bates?
I mean, we were just, we started talking about it last week because Matlock, and when is that second episode of Matlock coming out?
I do not know.
I've been checking. I like the pilot episode very much. I'm waiting for the
so
series. Good. But yeah, so Kathy Bates is the lead and it's Taylor Hackford is the director. And should we play the trailer for this 1995 film? Okay, the original 1995 trailer for Dolores Claiborne.
Oh my God. You killed her.
This is not a trial. This is a preliminary inquest in all cases of death as suspicious in nature.
Someone to see you here.
I told you I don't want no lawyer.
Dolores, it's your daughter.
When was your last visit?
15 years ago. I didn't kill her.
Not murder that witch anymore, and I'm wearing a diamond tiara.
We need a piece of your hair, Miss Claiborne.
Take what you want. I ain't doing any beauty pageants this week.
That is the last guy in the world you want to make an enemy out of.
Motive, money.
I ain't making one. I'm keeping one.
Eyewitness testimony.
What is that supposed to mean?
A documented history of threats.
You're gonna tell me you don't remember him?
Selena. We met before, Miss St. George.
Leave me alone!
I was the investigator when your father died.
No!
Maybe we should finish what was started 20 years ago.
You honest to God don't remember, do you?
How's that possible? I remember you hitting him!
You're an old hand at this, aren't you, Miss Claiborne? People do have a tendency to take some bad falls when you're around.
What did you do to him, Mommy? Why can't you believe my mother?
Because she's done it before.
You don't believe me, do you?
Selena, get in the house right now.
I am in the house.
Academy Award winner Kathy Bates. Jennifer Jason Leigh.
An accident, Dolores, can be an unhappy woman's best friend.
As I said, director Taylor Hackford, he helms this project. The screenplay is by Tony Gilroy, who does an amazing job of adapting.
So he wrote the Bourne trilogy. Mm-hmm. It is a masterful adaptation because they did have to make a lot of choices about how to tell this story because it's not just a woman sitting in front of a tape recorder.
Right.
Talking and talking and talking. That would not be a good movie. So they have to show, not tell.
Yes.
And that can be very tricky, when you're giving now, because in the book, what we get is 100% Dolores's take on everything. Dolores's description of what her husband was like. Dolores's description of Vera. Dolores's take on everything. But in the movie, we see things where Dolores isn't there. We see, and we have to see each of the characters as individual people, like fully fleshed out characters, not just what somebody says they are. And that can be very, very difficult. The dialogue is excellent. It's so good. It really, some of it is right out of the book, mm-hmm. but mainly it's giving us the exposition of that's in the book without seeming like that's what they're doing. It just seems like people are talking. I just really was blown away by the dialogue. Who else do we have? We have
Jennifer Jason Leigh as, oh my God. I mean, when is she not great? I mean,
she's always so good.
Excellent.
She's always good.
As Selena, David Strathern as Joe, who's
the baddie.
Terrifying.
He's so scary.
He's so bad. John C. Reilly. I always love a John C. Reilly moment.
Delightful.
Christopher Plummer He's the constable.
Talk about scary. He's terrifying in this film. I was very surprised because I've not seen this, so I did not know John C. Reilly was in it.
Yes.
I was like, oh, hey, hello.
Does a great Maine accent.
It was very good.
Yeah.
It was very as a super fan of Murder, She Wrote. I really appreciated the and Pepperidge Farm.
Judy,
very good.
Judy Parfitt is Vera Donavan, and she was an English stage actress and friends with Helen Mirren, who is married to Taylor Hackford, and she recommended her for the part.
Perfect.
And it's
perfect.
You couldn't pick oh my God.
Because Vera's like Dolores, Vera's a very complicated woman. She's extremely prickly. Like Dolores is prickly, but
Keeps
Vera's
herself.
on a different level altogether because she's got the cash and she doesn't need to deal with anybody ever for anything. So we get that, like her it's like whimsy, but her unpredictability, whimsy, but in a bad way.
Yes.
And there's a word for that, but impetuousness, I guess. She's got her own things that she's dealing with, but in the movie, she doesn't have kids. That whole element where she's hallucinating and all of that is not in the movie, really. She just is kind of old and infirm. We get her status, like she's somebody who's always had a lot of, social status, economic status. She can buy and sell whatever she wants, except her husband, apparently. And yet she really does have real feelings for Dolores. Like she really.
It's a depressingly masculine world we live in, Dolores.
Maybe I'm wrong.
What if you're right? Husbands die every day, Dolores. Why? One is probably dying right now while you're sitting here, weeping. They die and leave their wives their money. I should know, shouldn't I? Sometimes they're driving home from their mistress's apartment and their brakes suddenly fail. An accident, Dolores, can be an unhappy woman's best friend. Sometimes, Dolores, sometimes you have to be a high-riding bitch to survive. Sometimes being a bitch is all a woman has to hang on to. Now, go on home. Pam and Sheila can clean up. Remember, eclipse at 5.
She, in spite of all that, somewhere deep in that shriveled little heart of hers is a teeny little soft spot for Dolores Claiborne.
They're kind of kindred spirits, if you think about it.
They kind of are.
Yeah.
And notably, and I like that they brought this up in the film, that there are people in the town. So as Margos said, a lot of people in the town think that like she killed her husband and got away with it. And a lot of people are like, leave her alone. She's not hurting anybody. Like just
that people didn't like Joe. Joe was not a great guy. So it wasn't like he was missed. It's not like,
no, at all.
Yeah.
No. And I'm sure the people who worked with him were like, oh, thank God that guy's gone. And the way that they show that is by how they address Dolores. So the people who respect Dolores call her Dolores Claiborne, and the people who don't respect Dolores call her Dolores St. George.
Mrs.
And
St. George.
Vera, so Vera tellingly always refers to her as Dolores Claiborne. From the time that Joe is gone, she's Dolores Claiborne, and that is what Vera calls her. And so there's a respect there as well. And that's a lot to pack into a character. My goodness. And she does it so seamlessly. I just love this performance.
She's so good. I mean, and it's like we don't know who she is. Like as a viewer, I've never seen her before. I didn't see her on stage. This is my first time. And you've got to cast this one perfectly because she's really
It's true. It had to be exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah, like she has to be scary enough, but also like has a little bit in her, like when she pays attention to you and she's focusing on you, like it's important and you need to listen and you need to pay attention. When she finally like confronts Dolores and says, "What is going on with him and your daughter? Tell me." And it's, Dolores is just completely like, 'cause she's upset. Of course she is. She doesn't know how to make heads or tails of it.
Who wants to face that?
No one.
Right? Yeah.
And Vera gets it
But
right
Vera
away.
knows.
Vera knows. And Vera's telling her, no, this is not okay. And I love her scene where she explains to her, like, men die in accidents all the time, Dolores. They're with their mistress in Baltimore and then the brakes go out. Whoops, and they leave their money. And so Dolores kind of has to be talked into it. We should also say that. So it's just Dolores and Selena. And I really enjoyed and because I worked in magazines, but like Selena's character, she's a magazine writer and she's very successful, but she's also a mess as a person. She's just trying to get through every day, but she has all these demons and she probably never had therapy. She uses alcohol to numb herself. She's on a lot of pills to just get through the day. A lot. And
many pills.
She had an affair with her boss. And then that's broken up. And then she's in her mind, and she starts with the story like she's got a story in Arizona. And if she gets this story, it's going to be made into a movie and it's going to set her up. And she's always like going for the next thing. And her boss, Eric Bogosian's like, these things take time. When you go home with family stuff, maybe you should just be focusing on that. And she loses that in the middle of her being with Dolores on top of everything. And she doesn't remember the abuse. She only remembers maybe he hurt her. She doesn't even remember that so much.
Right.
She only remembers that she hit him. She remembers there was fighting, and she remembers she hit him, and she remembers that all of a sudden he was gone and dead. And then everybody in town thought her mother did it. And that's, how do you go through life like that go to high school and everything with that, all that happened?
Yeah. In a small town like that.
Yeah. I mean, that's a lot. So Selena goes to Vassar and then she goes to New York. And so she hasn't been home in 15 years. When she shows up, she doesn't even recognize people because she's just shoved that so far down. And Jennifer Jason Leigh is so good at just projecting all this sadness that this woman has and just how much.
Do you want to get out?
He was in for a fishing license today.
And he's in a hurry.
Can't believe it. He was just in the park yesterday.
Can I help you?
Yes, I'm looking for Dolores Claiborne.
And you are?
I'm her daughter.
I'm John Mackey, detective, Maine State Police.
Hello?
Could you please call Constable Stanshaw? Get him come right out.
Yes, sir.
Oh, I'm sorry. No smoking, public building. We've met before, Miss St. George.
Have we?
You were about 13. What year was that? The eclipse? Must have been, what, 75? I was the investigator. When your father died, we met at the hearing.
What's up, John?
Miss St. George is here.
Selena? Oh, my gravy. Frank Stamshaw. Marshall's brother?
Right.
Jonesport High.
Of course. How are you?
Yeah. Been quite a while, I guess.
Certainly has.
Huh. Well, be honest, I'm kind of surprised to see you here. Your mom's been pretty firm about us not trying to contact you. John, I didn't know Dolores made any calls.
She didn't call. I saw the Bangor paper. It was faxed to my office.
And where's that?
I came up from New York. Look, is she here or not?
She's just barely hanging on. Dolores was living with her full time, Vera full time. So when Vera dies and they get out of the house, like they go back to Dolores' house. And in the movie, everybody in town thinks Dolores is a nightmare and they ransacked her house and vandalized it. So they're staying there together. And Jennifer Jason Leigh has her alcohol and her cigarettes and her laptop, and she's trying to be the New Yorker in the middle of this thing. And her mother's trying to be like, what's going on with you? Are you happy? What's going on? And they're so good together, and they're only like a 15-year age difference, but
Yeah, that's true. But we have to. It has to be that way because Kathy Bates has to play 20 years younger,
right?
And so Kathy Bates is covering a lot of years.
She's
in this performance.
So good, and I mean, as great as she is as Annie, I think she's almost even better here. I mean, it's so many more notes that she has to hit.
But it's also like because unlike Annie, she has all these relationships with all these other characters, throughout the whole story of the film. That is more of them. So there's more of it's a more dimensional character. It's and over a longer stretch of time.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, you totally buy it when she's younger, and you totally buy it when she's older, and you see how her life unfolds and what that does to her over this very long stretch, which they managed to cover extremely well in this movie. Like, they didn't necessarily have to approach it that way. They could have kept it all, they had a number of ways they could have come at this story. So there's only the one child. There's only Selena in the movie, which is fine because the boys don't really figure that much. It's really about the two women.
Mm-hmm.
And or three women if you throw Vera in, I guess. And Vera doesn't have any kids. And there's some other thing that was different, but it'll come up, I'm sure. Anyway, I like the score.
Oh, Danny Elfman.
The house is done so well. The location is really giving it to us. I love the whole overlay of the investigator with that's Christopher Plummer that is terrifying.
He's so scary and mean.
That he's the same investigator that was the guy that investigated the husband's death, and he always felt that she got away with murder and he's just going to get her no matter what. And that's not in the book at all. Like, none of that is in the book at all, but it's great for the movie because it really helps us. It helps us to jump back and forth in time like that, because you've got these three you've got the actually all the characters. You've got Vera and Dolores and Selena, and now this investigator who are there for both of these deaths, suspicious deaths. Delores is the only one who really knows what happened in both cases. But he's completely clouded by his
obsession.
His obsession with convicting this woman.
Right. Because she's the one case that he wasn't able to completely solve to his satisfaction. Yes. So, and he looks like he's going to retire any day. So he's really, really not happy. I think the girl that played Ellen Muth, is that her name? She played young Selena. She's really good.
Oh, she's wonderful.
So great. And we should say, like, trigger warning. I mean, there's the stuff they talk about in the movie about what's going on between Selena and her father. And there's a scene on the ferry that's very upsetting, but
it's extremely upsetting.
Yeah. I don't know if they would go that far with it now. Maybe they would.
I know. I wondered that too when I was watching it. Yeah.
Because she's
I don't know. She's very young.
She's very young, and he's much older than her. And he's such a good actor. Like, he's very believable.
He's so evil in this. And again, in the movie, this is something that's different in the movie, that she has repressed the memory in the movie. And it suddenly comes to her when she's on the ferry leaving, because she's just, the whole time she's there, she's trying to get out of there.
She can't wait to leave. Yes.
She cannot wait to leave. But the fact is that somebody, when she was at her magazine in New York, somebody mysteriously faxed her and was like, "Hey, your mom's up for murder again. You better come back to Maine," but didn't say who it was from. And so she mainly goes because she wants to know who's that. Like, who is that that's doing this? It's not really that she cares about her mom per se. So she's always she's telling her mom, like, "I got to go do this big story. She's always running. She's drinking. She's taking pills. She's always running away and supposedly chasing this big story, but she's really running from her own story, of course. So she's supposedly leaving to go to work or whatever, and she's on the ferry, and that's where she has the flashback of her father abusing her on the same ferry, and she realizes, oh, and her mom has put the tape. This is not in the book at all.
Yes.
Her mom is like, "Yeah, I know you got to go. I packed your bags. Everything's, I'm glad you came, and, great to see you.
Don't worry about me.
Don't worry about me." And after she leaves, she discovers this audio tape and she plays it, and it's the mom explaining everything that happened. And even then she's like, I don't know. She doesn't really know what to believe. And but then she's out on this ferry, she has the flashback and remembers. And then it kind of all hits her all at once, and she realizes that she's been running from instead of running to after or running to. And that's a great scene, the way that she's so good in this.
Like, so good. I mean, also the scene, they filmed this in Halifax, which I have friends there. I need to go. It's so beautiful.
It looks so gorgeous.
That scene with the eclipse is beautiful.
It's so pretty, right? It really is.
Gorgeous. Yeah. Like that scene is terrifying. Like he looks scary, like he's out to kill her.
Like when she gets back, I'm gonna get my belt. I'm gonna get my belt!
The only thing you're gonna get is a long stretch in Shawshank Prison for child molesting!
The more you run, the worse it's gonna be! You're gonna get your payback now! It's gonna cost you more than money! You're mine now! Go! Dee! Give me a hand before I fall away, English! Dee! Help me before I fall away, English! Tell me, what are you doing? Dee! Where are you going? What are you doing? Dee, come on! Dee, don't go where, goddammit, where are you going? What are you doing? Dee! What are you... You're gonna die. Help somebody! Oh God, somebody help me, please! Help! You help!
But when they have all that exploding and stuff, and there's a scene where she points to the sky and she sees a star. And in the middle of all this, and Stephen King has a lot of this in his books, but then years later, you learn the Stephen King universe and you realize, oh, they're connected. And it's connected with a character in Gerald's Game, which maybe will befall one day. But they see the same thing at the same time. And he moves the eclipse to 1975, which seems to make a little bit more sense.
Right. So in the movie, it's the 90s and the 70s, where in the book, it's the 80s and the 60s.
Right. Yeah. She has this great scene where Jennifer is kind of explaining to him, like, this doesn't make any sense. This is a long suicide note, basically, that Vera wrote. Like, all that you have is just showing that Vera really, really was at her end, kind of forced her hand and forced it on her mother. And her mother, and that they loved each other in her own way. And she even says a few things like, nobody else cared about them. You know, she goes, I haven't been here. They have a couple of visitors occasionally that'll come by, but that's it. And they only had each other. And and for Dolores, she's like, yeah, I had a nice room, you know, it was, and now her whole world is blown up and she didn't want the house. She didn't know she was going to get this money or anything. It just, so you don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, there's no epilogue in the movie like there is for the book. So as far as we know, in the movie land, she gets that money. And I don't know.
I hope she does. I hope she
does.
Hopes it makes a B&B out of that place. I hope she becomes an entrepreneur. Maybe. I don't know. I hope Selena's okay. I hope, all of it. It's just so well done. It's so well done. And
it's so well written. It's a lot of, like we said, a lot of things cut out of the story, but the basic arc is there. But we also get, it's not Dolores sitting there talking into a tape recorder for 2.5 hours. We have to have these characters that having that character of Christopher Plummer, but having this investigator who is like, like a shark. He just is not, he just wants this one thing. He just wants to put this woman in jail once and for all. And he doesn't care why she did it. He's just mad that he didn't get her when he could have gotten her. And that is a really great element. Like, it's already tense. There's already so much stuff happening. We have 2 murders, but having that extra character in there that's driving everything, kind of, because without him, without him, then Selena. We'll learn that he's the one that he was the one that faxed Selena. So without
Selena,
him,
you just look at the top cover page. The number of where it comes from is usually there.
It's not that hard.
It's not that hard to find. Even
when you would get a
95.
fax, yeah, when you got a fax back in the day,
it
would
at the
say
top,
who
the
it was
phone
from.
number. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of hard to sneak that.
Kind of like caller ID, but like in print right there for you.
But I get it. I go for it. I'm fine.
Yeah.
And I think Jennifer Jason Leigh is very strong in that scene because it's wrapping
great.
it all up. And when she says to him, like, if I can live with this, why can't you? Like, and she's right. Like, yeah, let it go, buddy.
What are you doing?
What are you even doing here?
And that's another big difference is that in the book, the whole history of Joe's abuse to Dolores and to Selena, that all comes out. But in the movie, it doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
In the movie, like they assume he's a bad guy, but because there's nobody testifying like, oh, our wonderful Joe, we miss him. But all of that story does not come out to the investigators or to was it a coroner's inquest that they're at?
It was a coroner's inquest, right? They didn't know any of that stuff. That's just Jennifer Jason Leigh. That's her just putting it all together in her head.
Mm-hmm.
Like Vera encouraged her.
It stays between the two of them. It stays between the mother and the daughter, which is not a thing that happens in the book at all. In the book, like it all just comes out and it's all part of some kind of a record. So that's very different too. So you don't get that little, like tidy little epilogue like you do in the book. You don't know. Are they going to have a relationship now? Is Dolores rich now? I don't know.
What's Dolores going to do? She's in her 60s. I mean,
and she's had a hard go of it.
She needs a rest.
Who was Kathy Bates's hand model?
Oh, yeah.
Hand double. Like they do all this stuff with a hand double. Like these hands, like that are so not Kathy Bates's hands.
No.
Like
they're very big and they're scraggly.
They're much bigger than her hand. Yeah.
And when she has to when Vera makes her put up the sheets, 6 pins, Dolores, 6 pins on the sheets. Like, okay, Vera. Yeah. Vera's very specific. Vera has a lot of rules.
It's excellent. I really was so impressed.
Yeah.
Excellent right from the start. It's you get right in there. I was wondering I also wondered how are they gonna what's the opening scene going to be? Like, do we start with Vera tumbling down? I didn't know. Like, where were we starting with this story?
Mm-hmm.
I was very surprised, and I just think it's done extremely well in a very satisfying way. And the cast, what do you even say?
It's just this came out. I mean, the year before was Shawshank Redemption. There was a lot of just Stephen King going on at this time, kind of this renaissance for him. I think it's one of the best of the adaptations for his material. I think it's just top drawer.
It's really good in that it takes, the book is so wonderful because we get this amazing character of this woman who's telling you her story. And in the movie, we get that. But we also get Selena and Vera, and so it's like bonus.
And Christopher Plummer. My God.
I love it. I
love this
so happy
bit
with
of
it.
trivia. They the costumer, they kept trying to put Christopher Plummer in suits to make him look terrible, like look rumpled, and they could not make him.
He's too dashing.
He's too and he said, I'm built for suits. So he made that drawing on his nose of the scar. That was his idea. Like to give him a little bit more of a menace, because they couldn't make him look schlumpy no matter how hard they tried. He's like, yeah, no, I look good in suits. I'm a suits guy. But I think John C. Reilly, like I said, there's Bob Gunton, he was in Shawshank Redemption as the prison warden. He's the bank manager. That scene at the bank when she's,
oh my gosh.
God, every woman has been through something. Keep your voice down.
Want to smack him. He's so terrible.
So smarmy.
So mediocre and smarmy.
All women working at the bank, and he's the one in charge.
He's the guy in charge.
Ugh. Yeah. Yeah. Is there a lot of here about the abuse of men on women and what it does to them, and the anger that women have about this, and righteous anger, I say.
Mm-hmm.
You know, don't be an abusive creep. Your wife won't throw you down a well.
Simple.
That's my takeaway.
So, book or movie?
I'm very, very, very torn, and I'm going to be wimpy and make a tie because, especially after I just listened to it, and I really enjoyed listening to it and diving into her, and it looks so beautiful with the maps and everything.
It's a beautiful book.
It's gorgeous.
I mean, it really is.
The artist for the cover is Rob Wood, and it's really, really. But the map inside, the direction of the eclipse and everything, it's just.
And just to have the eclipse looming over every page like that.
Yes. Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah.
I have to also give it a tie. I really loved, although I love the choices made for the film, and I totally get 100% why they were made. In the book, I did appreciate the fact that it's 3 kids. The whole thing about Vera and her children, I thought I've always really thought that was a great, parallel between the 2 women. And, but I also get why, like, you have to make choices for time. And, the movie would be 4 hours long if we did all these things.
You could make a mini series of this and I would watch it.
You could.
And I would totally watch it. Yeah.
So I'm going to also call it a tie, but highly recommend.
Yeah.
And it's a book, you could read more than once. Well, Stephen King's, just in general, you can always read Stephen King, even if you've read it already, you're like,
I'm going to go back.
Carrie again.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So tie. Yeah. Now next week.
It's going to be so fun, y'all.
Help me.
Be afraid. Be very afraid. We are having 2 special guests. You'll meet them next week. We're going to keep that a surprise, but we're going to be talking about The Fly, which is based on a short story in the 50s or the 60s. I forget. We have a book with that.
50s.
I think the 50s. And it's going to be the 1986 one with Jeff Goldblum and Gina Davis. That's next week. And then the week after that, we're going to do Night of the Hunter. So everybody just get your reading and your movie watching all set up. We're really excited. This is like I said, it's like one of our favorite times of the year is covering these kinds of books and movies.
So, Margot, where can people find you on the internet?
You can find me at Brooklyn Fitchick. That's my site, and that's where I am for Twitter and Instagram, Threads, and then I'm at Brooklyn Margot for TikTok. And where can they find you?
You can find me online at coloniabook.com, and all my social media callouts are at She's Nacho Mama.
All right, everybody. We'll be back soon with a new episode. Thank you so much for listening to the Book versus Movie podcast. We're a part of the Frolic Podcast Network. You could find more podcasts you will love at frolic.media/podcasts. You could find us on Twitter, Threads, Blue Sky, and Instagram at Book versus a Movie. Just spelled it all out. We have a Patreon page. Type in there Book vs. Movie Podcast, where you can find 8 years worth of shows. You can follow Margot D on social media at Brooklyn Margot and also Brooklyn Fitchick. You can find Margot P at She's Nacho Mama. Thank you again for listening, and please be sure to send along your suggestions for the show. Remember, the book needs to be easy to get your hands on, and the movie has to be streaming on a major platform. We will be back soon with a new episode.